There was no reference to this man, Muhammad. We can't find any reference to the city called Mecca. We can't find any manuscript for any book called the Qur'an. None of this we can find in the 7th century. But that's just silence. Where's the evidence? How do you prove evidence for something that never existed? Do you see the problem, folks? That was 1995. This is 2025, 30 years later. And everything I'm going to introduce tonight is based on evidence. We finally have the evidence.
Welcome to Events and History, where we explore the origins, teachings, and historical development of Islam with a fact-based, analytical approach. This is a continuation of Part 2, so if you haven't watched Part 2, watch it here now so you can understand Part 3. You may also start with Part 1 if you haven't so that you understand the full series. In this Part 3, Dr. J starts looking for any reference to the Muhammad of Islam in the 7th century. What he found will blow your mind. Muhammad was actually a title for the Messiah and was used for Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, the Arabian conquerors, who were Christian heretics then, were looking to create their own religion to unite their expanding empire. Let's watch Dr. J's show now.
Let's continue on. But which Muhammad is Raymond talking about? Which is the Muhammad that you support, Ahmed? Or no, I'm sorry, you're Abdul. I'm going to keep changing your name. Abdul. Okay, Abdul, which is the one you support? See, if you support the Muhammad of Islam, then you have to agree to 4 things. And Raymond has to agree these 4 things. Number 1, he must have the name Muhammad that looks like that. There it is. This is the only Arabic I'm going to force on you people tonight, all right? You don't have to learn Arabic tonight, but learn that name there. You know Arabic?
Yeah, we are from Egyptian.
You're Egyptian. Okay, is that Muhammad up there?
Yes.
Okay, is there a Dama and a Fata up there?
Yes.
Is there a Mimdal?
Yes.
Okay, so that's Muhammad. Okay, we got our Arab speakers down here. All right, you're going to help me out, all right? The rest of you, don't worry about it. Just listen to me say yes to everything I say. So that's what Muhammad looks like, right? And whenever you read it, that's what it looks like. Hugely important, you'll see why. Now, he must have lived in the city of Mecca. In order to be the Muhammad of Islam, he had to have come from Mecca. If he didn't come from Mecca, he's no longer the Muhammad of Islam. Because he spent 52 years there, folks. He received half this book there. All right? That's where the holy places are. That's where the Kaaba is. That's where everybody focuses 5 times a day praying towards. So it has to be Mecca. Number 3, he must have received this Qur'an, all 114 surahs from that place and from that time, and everything had to have happened in the 7th century. Those are the 4 things you have to claim. Are you following me, Abdul? You're starting to get a little nervous now. Don't worry. If you're getting nervous, what about Raymond Ibrahim? Okay? So those are the 4 things you have to accept. Conclusion, all 4 of the above criteria, the man, the place, the book, and the time, must be fulfilled in order to prove that the Muhammad of Islam actually existed, that your Muhammad actually existed, all right? So let's go ahead and let's start and let's look at this name. Now, Raymond suggests that we can find the name Muhammad in a written text, just like the one I showed you. Mimha Mimdal with a Dama Fata and Fata, all right? But that name requires 4 consonants and 3 vowels. Am I correct? In the 7th century, there were no vowels. There were no vowels in the Arabic text. Today there are, right? But back in the 7th century, there were only 16 consonants. How many consonants are there in the text today? 28. That's right, thank you. 28 today, but 16 back then. Where did they get the other 12 from? They didn't exist in the 7th century. They had to be created in the 8th and 9th century. All right, are you following this? You're my Arab speakers, okay? If you get it, the rest of you will not get it. But as long as you get it, that's important, okay? So the earliest Quranic manuscripts, now look at them, here they are. I'm giving you 5 of the earliest 6 manuscripts. I want my Arab speakers to go up and read what's up there on those scripts. Can you read it?
Yes.
No, you cannot.
Well, of course it is not Arabic.
It is Arabic.
But it is not Arabic.
Old Arabic. It is old.
What's wrong with it?
It is written like a
You can't read a word of it, can you? You can try to guess what it is, but you need 5 dots, don't you? If you have one dot above a bold face, that becomes a nun, right? If you have two dots, becomes a ta. If you have three dots, it becomes a tha. If you have one dot below, it becomes a ba. And two dots becomes a ya. Na, ta, tha, ba, ya. Do you see them up there? Not one dot. So you can't read it, can you? And yet these are the earliest Quranic manuscripts. And these are not from the 7th century. These are from the 8th and 9th century. So what Muhammad are you talking about? Where's Muhammad there? Because Muhammad requires 3 vowels. Do you see any vowels in any of those manuscripts? Do you see any damas or kasras or fattas? I don't see any. And this is why Raymond hasn't done his history. Are you listening to this, Abdul? Please listen. This is for you too. I know you don't know Arabic, but they agree with me. In the 7th century, there were no 5 dots. Today, there are 5 dots. These diacritical marks had to be invented because nobody could read that. You can't read it. But that's why they had to be created in the 8th and 9th century. So with that in mind, what does the word Muhammad look like today? That's what it looks like today, all right? You both agreed with me that. But since there were no vowels back then, this is what it looked like back then. Now read it. Ooh, did you hear? Mahmad. So suddenly it goes from Muhammad to Mahmad. Thank you. Let's give her a hand. Abdul, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be clapping. This is shutting you down. You just keep somber for a while, okay? So now it's become mim ha mim dal with no vowels, which means this is a word. It's not Muhammad, but it's Mahmad. How do we know that? How can we prove that right now? Well, we need to go to John of Damascus, good old John of Damascus. See, John of Damascus was there in the courts of Abdul Malik from 685 to 705. He was a Christian. He was there in Damascus. That's why he's called John of Damascus. He was a treasure for Abdul Malik. And so he was watching what was happening, and he was seeing that this dispute was happening between the Ishmaelites and those who come in the line of Isaac. The Jews and the Christians come in the line of Isaac, but the Umayyads were Ishmaelites, and they did not have a prophetic line. They didn't have any scripture like the Jews and the Christians had. And yet they controlled now from, by the time Abdul Malik comes to power, from Spain all the way to India and from Turkey all the way to Yemen. So they were the second biggest superpower of their day. The problem is they had no identity. The Byzantine Empire, the other biggest empire that there was, the biggest competitor, they had a prophetic line. They had a scripture. They had a whole series of prophets. What did the Ishmaelites have? They needed a prophet, and they needed a book, a revelation that would equal what was going on. So he was watching this, right? He sees this all happening. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't write anything because he's under their employ. So when he retires in 730, now look at the date, 730, we're well into the 8th century. We're 100 years after Muhammad had died, if Muhammad had existed. He then writes his greatest masterpiece. And what does he title it? Look at the title. The Heresy of the Ishmaelites. Ooh, I love that. Why does he say Heresy of the Muslims? Because there were no Muslims that early. Muslims, that word did not exist. We can't find any reference for anybody called Muslims. No Muslims. So he calls them Ishmaelites. Ishmaelites. Now we see what's going on. And he talks about this prophet that these Ishmaelites have. This, what does he say? He says that from that tonight, a false prophet called Muhammad. Now notice he's writing in Greek. In Greek, the vowels are there. Look at the Greek, those who can read Greek. What does it say up there on the top left that's circled? Muhammad. It's Muhammad. John of Damascus tells us what it is. It's Muhammad. So this Muhammad, who after conversing with an Arian monk, who are the Arians? They didn't believe that Jesus was God. They didn't believe in the Trinity, and they didn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They didn't believe Jesus at all was divine. Arius is the one that brought this up in the 4th century. The Arian controversy has been around ever since, almost from the 2nd century. You have the Ebionites bringing up the same problem. Arius brought this up in the 4th century. Athanasius was told to shut him down at the Council of Nicaea, which he did, and here it raises its head again. And there is John of Damascus watching this. He's ringside seat, and he writes this, his greatest piece. And he says, this Muhammad, this new prophet, this Arian monk, who get your material from, and he goes on, he fabricates his own heresy, and then he talks about that this monk has 4 books. The book of the cow, ooh, that's Surah 2 in the Quran today. The book of the women, that's Surah 4 in the Quran today. The book of the table, that's Surah 5 of the Quran today. And the book of the camel. There is no surah called the camel. But what are 4 books doing when there's supposed to be only 1 book called the Qur'an? Isn't that interesting? This is 730, well into the 8th century. But now we know who this Muhammad is. His name is not Muhammad, his name is Muhammad. So who in the world is Muhammad? Wait till you find out. Here we go. What does Muhammad mean in Arabic? It is not a name, it is a title. It means the praised one, the blessed one, the anointed one, or even the Messiah. It's a title, folks. Have any of you heard this name before? You have? Where have you heard it? Okay, in Arabic, but where did you hear it before Arabic? How about Hebrew? Anybody here speak Hebrew? Anybody studied Hebrew? Have you looked at the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament? You will find Muhammad 11 times in the Old Testament. Muhammad is well known in the Bible. You didn't know that, did you? Well, here we go. The Ugarites were the first to introduce this word in 1400 BC, the Muhammad, the praised one, the anointed one. It was then borrowed in Hebrew in 1000 BC and put into our Bibles 11 times. Song of Solomon 5:16, the Muhammad, the altogether lovely one, the praised one that Solomon's referring to. There's the Muhammad we're looking for. Now, by the 4th century, St. Ambrose, the early church father, took it. Remember, Arabic comes from Aramaic, which comes from Hebrew. So therefore, it's all the same letters. They use all the same letters. They're all Semitic letters. They use the same consonantal text. And therefore, St. Ambrose, writing in Syriac, talks about this Muhammad from Song of Solomon 5:16. And he says this is a title for Jesus Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah. That's what the anointed one is. From that time on, from the 4th century AD, it was this Muhammad was employed by many of the church fathers. Here's some examples. Origen, in the early 3rd century, the Christian theologian, interpret the Song of Solomon 5:16 passage as the unique scripture where the eschatological nuptials of Christ and his bride are present. St. Ambrose, in the 4th century AD, introduced the ideas of that Song of Solomon 5:16 passage referred to Muhammad was to be considered a title for Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Gregory of Elvira continued that idea in the late 4th century. St. John Cassian continued that in the 5th century. St. Augustine, the great church father, continued that in the 5th century, and then Apollonius in the middle of the 7th century also believed that this Muhammad was Jesus Christ. Conclusion, the title Muhammad, not the name Muhammad, the title Muhammad, was a common title for Jesus by the 7th century in the church in that part of the world, especially in Arabic, which took it from Aramaic. So we should not be surprised when we find it written in many places at that time. It's written all over the place. That's why we find Muhammad after Muhammad after Muhammad. But it's not just the Christians, the Jews also use that title in Hebrew. If you have any doubt, just take a look at this inscription from 523. This is a good 100 years before Muhammad even came in, when Muhammad died. And this is a 6th century Jewish rock inscription in what is today Yemen. It's there in Najran. And it is translated by the Lord of the Jews by the Muhammad. The Muhammad in Sabbaic script, I'm just putting it out to you. You can see it there in Sabbaic script. This is not the Arabic script that we see in the Quran. This is the Sabbaic script that comes from Yemen. It is Arabic, but it's not the same script. Isn't that interesting? But look at the term Muhammad that is used there by the Jews. So, let's show you a quick synopsis. Muhammad means the praised one, or the blessed one, or the anointed one, or even the Messiah later on. So it's not a name. It's not a name, folk. It's a title. It was used in Ugaritic in 1400 BC, borrowed by the Jews in Hebrew in 1000 BC. That's why you have it 11 times in our Bible. It was subsequently employed by St. Ambrose in the 4th century as a title for Jesus Christ. The Jews also referred to it in their reference. And what was interesting, by the 7th century, the Jews started using that title for their exilarchs. The exilarchs were those who were in charge of the seminary in what is today Baghdad. Arabic. So they have all been speaking Arabic, and they had always put Muhammad before their name. Muhammad ben Huziel. Muhammad bin David, Muhammad ben everyone. They have 5 different exilarchs where they put Muhammad before the name, the praised one, the anointed one. It was a title of endearment, of authority, of credibility, well used in Arabic and Aramaic by the 7th century. Thus, by the 7th century, the Christians used Muhammad to refer to the returning Messiah, while the Jews used Muhammad to refer to the Messiah yet to come, and at times interchanged it with the Messiah. Conclusion, therefore the term Muhammad was well known in that part of the world and at that time, but it was not pronounced Muhammad like you do today. That is how we now pronounce it. And there lies the confusion that Raymond's having, and same with you, Abdul. I can see you're confused now as well.
Dr. J used the work of St. John of Damascus to prove that there was no group called Muslims as of 730 AD, about 100 years after the Prophet of Islam was supposed to have died, if at all he lived. Which is why John of Damascus called it the heresy of the Ishmaelites. So, by 8th century, the Arabian conquerors, also called the Saracens, were Christian Arianian heretics, not Muslims, according to John of Damascus in 730 AD. There were no group called Muslims in the early 8th century, contrary to the claim of the standard Islamic narrative that a prophet called Muhammad started Islam in the early 7th century. Moreover, Muhammad is not a personal name but a title, which at various times has been used for the Messiah by both the Christians and the Jews. Watch part 4 to see how the Arabian conquerors, in creating a religion for their expanding empire, fashioned a prophet with the title Muhammad later on in the 8th century.